The Persians believe they are superior to everybody else. They have an extraordinary history. They have an extraordinary culture. And they are not the type of people that are going to fold going, oh, he threatened us on Twitter. It just, this doesn't play to this country. I wish somebody in the administration actually understood the history of the Persian people to understand why all of this is counterproductive.
It's counterproductive. I saw it on MS-13 this morning. Morning Joke is a historian of the Persian people, of Persia, of Iran. He's one of them. He's a goose-stepping fascist. Little cat scratch fever. You know, that cat scratch fever, what does that go with today? I know what that goes with today, cat scratch fever. The Democrats are spreading new diseases in America. Health officials report record number of potentially fatal typhus cases. Typhus. Quote, everyone is at risk. And it turns out the typhus is being unleashed in Los Angeles. They've got a record number of typhus cases there. And it's coming from Fleas. Fleas. Now, I don't want to say that every illegal alien to come across our border with a gun and a machete and a gang tattoo on their neck is, a flea-bitten, disease-ridden hoe. But apparently enough of them are flea-bitten, disease-ridden hoes, illegal aliens crossing our border, that now they've got an outbreak of typhus with record numbers of the flea-borne illness, potentially fatal flea-borne illness. Los Angeles Times actually reported this story. Kind of hard to believe. But they've got another epidemic because flea-borne typhus cases are all the rage in Los Angeles. And they, I guess they're growing bored with monkeypox, which they inflicted upon the world because eat. And the Democrats, you know, what they do everywhere they go, spreading venereal diseases and so on. So that's pretty amazing. But cat scratch fever made me think of this story out of California with the highest ever recorded number of cases. 187 cases. And they're, that was in 2024. And then in 2025, then they had a record number of cases. And now they're planning on more and more. They want to have more flea-borne typhus cases in California. Just don't go to California. They'll steal everything you have. Oh, and New York City, they'll steal everything you have, too. Pretty amazing stuff. Yes, sir. Crazy, crazy. You're a Democrat Party. And they are definitely behind this flea-bitten, the flea-bitten illegals spreading typhus all around Southern California in record numbers. And the Democrats applaud that because they're a mentally ill death cult. And they all have gender dysphoria. I hope to get New York, too, because they've got the communist jihadi mayor up there, Zohran Mamdani. He's planning on stealing everything from everybody. For example, listen to this. He's planning on making the inheritance rate, the inheritance for estate tax in California. Right now, it's at 16%. So if let's say you have $1 billion, like a really rich person that created something big, and you've been very successful, you have $1 billion. When you die, they take 16% of that from you at gunpoint. But wait, because the mayor, Zohran Mamdani, he's got a better idea. Here's his plan. Under his new tax plan, they'll take 50%, 50%. They'll take half of everything when you die. And they'll show up with guys and guns wearing masks with body armor that don't say police on them. And that'll be okay with them because they're stealing half of what your whole family spent generations working hard to amass. And let's say you're Silicon Valley type and you've made $100 billion and you're living in New York. Say, I'm not feeling very well. I think your little woman is going to say, we need to move out of New York because they're going to steal 50% of the $100 billion that you've earned in your lifetime by creating big things like Apple or something like that, and Microsoft And you got they raised the top estate tax rate from 16% to 50%, half of everything. These guys, they really should be carrying guns the way that they commit crimes. Just amazing. But the Democrats, now we just listened to Joe Scarborough on MS-13 DNC. Pretty amazing stuff. And they've got, they're very mentally ill. Yeah, Iran doesn't respond to this. He knows what Iran responds to. He's so smart. He's like Ike. He's Ike. I know everything. And these people are amazing. Now, back to Iran, because President Trump has been talking about Iran. President Trump is definitely threatening Iran. And at 8 p.m. Eastern time here in the United States of America, tonight, the president says Iran will have either capitulated or they will be pounded into the ground by U.S. military might and perhaps Israeli military might. During the rescue of our F-15 crew members, we really pulled out all the stops. We had B-2 bombers, the stealth bombers out of Missouri, fly round-trip flights to drop bombs, including on an underground bunker where the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leadership was hiding. And the Democrats, they're on the side of Iran. They genuinely and authentically are. In fact, Democrats should be self-immolating on the Mall in Washington to show their support for Iran, as they did at least two, and really more, Democrats self-immolated, one at the Israeli embassy here in Washington, one at the Israeli consulate in Atlanta, because they love Hamas. They loved, past tense, Hamas. They don't love anything anymore because they're crispy critters. They crispy crittered themselves. But they did it because they love Hamas and hate the Jews. And they're Democrats. All the Democrats should be wearing armbands and goose-stepping around. Now, before we get into all this audio, because it's good-looking audio, and I'm looking forward to it, and the news media is mentally ill, and Donald Trump is a war criminal, and the Iranians are not, but the Democrats are, again, severely mentally ill, and they love murder, and they're not on our side. Got to keep those things in mind. But before we get into all that audio, which I'm looking forward to, let's go back to the phones for a moment. Let's go to Dino, calling from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Dino Benino.
Hey.
What is up,
Chris,
Dino?
You there?
Yes, sir, I am.
Dino, from D.C., the lift car driver.
Yeah, man, I know you.
It's been a while. I've called a number of times, man. You're harder to get a hold of than Trump. I got to mention.
I try to avoid that, but
yeah, I mean, boy, you're a tough man to get a hold of, and plus, I'm not Democrat. You know, I'm I work for a living.
Right,
so
right,
I can only
yes.
get on
Oh,
so
yeah,
long.
I know. I got
But
you.
anyway, Chris, it's good to talk to you, my friend.
Welcome.
And I want to meet you for a beer, and I'll just call it the Mexican place you're talking about the other day, which I know exactly where it's at. Not a bad place.
Not bad. Having the margaritas, and my best
Yeah.
girl had a sangarita. She had two, actually. Sangria.
I'm not sure I've ever had one of those. But anyway, Mr. Plant,
Yes,
couple
sir.
things is that don't forget now Easter. Most people celebrate Easter,
Uh-huh.
a couple days ago. For
Sure.
us,
Yeah.
I'm Greek Orthodox Christian.
Oh, okay.
So our Palm Sunday was actually on, which is also not far away from you. It's behind the National Cathedral.
Sure, I know
It's
it well,
the Greek
yeah.
Orthodox
Yeah.
Cathedral, sure.
Yeah.
St.
St. Sophia's.
Not always a week later.
The domed
Right.
St. Sophia's right off Mass Ave there.
That's
Yeah.
correct. You know your neighborhood well.
I do.
But I want you to mention the Greek Easter.
Uh-huh.
Another thing I've been meaning to mention to you is that I drove from last summer. I drove from we flew out and we had to move a friend anyway. So I drove to I flew to California. We drove back.
Uh-huh.
It's actually Manassas, Virginia, which
Okay.
is Mass, close by.
Sure.
Well, one thing that was funny is that I walk into a restaurant in Arizona, and there's a guy sitting there with a T-shirt on, and what does it say? It says, if there weren't double standards, there'd be no standards at all.
Uh-huh.
And so I got to go talk to the guy because you're the only one that says that. I mean, other than people that, imitate you, or I say it sometimes too. So I say to the guy, and I was curious to see what he was going to say. I wasn't just going to go out and say this was Chris Plant. I said, "Where'd you get that shirt from?" He goes, "Who else? Chris Plant."
Is that right?
So you've got far-reaching tentacles, as you know, as the Greeks might say. One other thing is you had mentioned, and this was a while ago. I don't know why I'm always yelling. A while ago, Tony LoBianco.
Yeah, Tony LoBianco. Yeah, he was a friend of mine.
Yeah, nearby, and I didn't realize, and I pick him up. Oh, goes back probably, I can't remember when. But I picked up him, actually, and his wife had broken her leg or something. I picked him up in Bethesda someplace and drove him into his house, which is in Poolsville, something like that. He's got a huge estate and farmland, really. And he's got a huge Trump sign in front of the house. I love that.
Yeah, Tony Lo, French connection, great Hollywood actor, movie star, Tony LoBianco.
French. I'm not sure if the guy, which, by the way, another thing pissing me off. The only thing that pisses me off is that every time I call, I got to talk to this kid. Is his name Jeff? I mean, I really like to talk to Jasmine. But, and I've never met or seen Jasmine, but I got a feeling she looks a hell of a lot better than Jeff does.
Well, that would certainly be fair.
Is that okay to say on air?
It is. Yeah, it is. On our air, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to cross any lines.
There are no lines here. We're wild up. This is America here. We get to be Americans.
Yeah, Mr. Plain, one more thing.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago, I'm driving. That's another reason I was just getting ready to call you. I call, not fairly often, but every now and then. I was waiting. I got to work. I can't wait. But anyway, it's a thrill to talk to you. But anyway, so I'm driving by National Cathedral.
Right.
This was not even a month ago, a couple of weeks ago. So I see, and there's a National Cathedral school for girls, if you know, right next to it, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, and then uniforms and so on, whatever it is. Anyway, so I see with adults at both ends, because they're the girls and their little uniforms, the Catholic school uniforms, and so on. Are and this is
Episcopal
elementary school age.
Yeah,
elementary
go ahead.
School age.
Right.
They're going down the street and they're holding signs.
Right.
And I'm wondering, what are these little kids holding the signs for? It's about, I didn't know if I got the whole thing, but it's amazing that it basically is something about women's rights, and they're protesting something. These are elementary school girls.
Yeah. And
they've already out with the signs.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I really was shocked. Elementary school. They weren't, I mean, I've got kids. I know I can distinguish between age groups. These weren't junior high, not high school, because they're already brainwashed. But you're thinking now they're starting in elementary school? Good God.
Right. Yeah, they are. Yeah, and it's there are Episcopal schools, 3 Episcopal schools affiliated with the National Cathedral and on the National Cathedral grounds in St. Albans. Mr. Global Warming, Inconvenient Truth. A lot of people went to the St. Albans school and all that good stuff. Al Gore went there, and a lot of people. Well, listen, Dino, you covered a lot of territory there, buddy. A lot of stuff, and it's fun. Arizona running into somebody with a Chris Plant wearing "Not for Double Standards, Liberals would have no standards at all" T-shirt. That is great fun. A lot of fun, and people are good out there. There are great people, and Tony LoBianco, great friend. He actually passed away recently. His wife Elise is alive and well. In fact, we need to have brunch. We need to have brunch one of these days. But, a lot of stuff going on out there, Dino. And listen, you're driving around D.C. You keep your eyes peeled, as painful as that sounds, and stay safe. It's like Hill Street Blues. Be safe out there. Stay safe out there, Dino. Thanks. Good to hear your voice. Good stuff. Yes, sir. I got a lot of audio coming up of the president and others and the media and Iran and war criminal. Who's the war criminal here? Ask any Democrat and you'll find out. Remarkable stuff. Thanks, Dino. Now, right now, the voices in our culture are loud, but truth is often silent or shouted down. And today, preborn needs you to help speak that truth. Women facing unplanned pregnancies may be pressured to act quickly before they have time to pause and breathe and hear the truth about human life, dignity, and hope. But I refuse to be silent, you may have noticed, and I'd like to ask you to join me in doing the same thing. At Preborn Network Clinics, a woman is welcomed in with open arms, with compassion, and given a free ultrasound. She sees the human life growing inside of her son, her daughter, often for the very first time. And in that sacred moment, fear gives way to clarity, to humanity. And she's offered something the abortion industry will never provide, the hope of Jesus Christ and God. This April, our goal at Preborn is to have 11,000 gospel conversations in Preborn Network clinics. You can help make that possible by sponsoring ultrasounds. Just $28 American dollars provides one ultrasound. $140 provides 5 ultrasounds for mothers in crisis in that moment. Every dollar helps to save unborn babies and to share the hope of the gospel. To donate, just dial pound 250, and when prompted, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, the keyword is baby, or go to Al Gore's Amazing Internet to preborn.com/plant. That's me, preborn.com/plant. Yes, sir. So we've got that. See, there are good and normal people out there. Isn't that nice? Normal people. Oh, we've got a lot. We've got President Trump, and there's a big 8 p.m. Eastern Time deadline for Iran tonight. Wait till you hear what's being discussed by our news media friends.
If it wasn't for double standards around here, we wouldn't have any standards.
Okay, short block here before I get to all the audio of President Trump and the crazy Democrats. And President Trump got him going today with his statement. Right now, let's go to Tsunami Tom, calling from Lorton, Virginia. Tsunami Tom, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, good talking to you.
Hey, man.
I just wanted to point out something really interesting. The people in the media, like your boy on MSLSD over there, blonde boy, I think you called him once, but they're so smart. They know everything. It's just, I mean, they're professors, they're doctors, they're scientists, they're engineers, and now they're historians. It's just amazing how much they know. But have you noticed that everyone in the media never actually builds, does, or performs anything of value? All they do is tear people down that do. And it's just disgusting. Like,
they're also not biologists. You may be aware of this, Tsunami Time. They're also not biologists like their Supreme Court justice. Yeah, they're fake smart. I was texting back and forth this morning with a bunch of people, including my brothers, some brothers, and I had to share my picture, my photograph of me with Reza Pahlavi, the Shah, the deposed Shah, the heir to the Shah's throne, in exile, living here in the United States of America. Ran into him recently, had a nice conversation with him. Perfectly nice man, good guy, all that stuff. But the president really stirred things up a little bit with the threat, and it's very clearly a threat, to Iran to respond by 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight and capitulate to the demands of the U.S., or we're going to treat them like they're a terrorist regime, which, of course, they are. They are. However, I don't think they have an outbreak of flea-borne typhus like Los Angeles does. They're probably cleaner than Los Angeles. I'm just going to guess. And I also, this story out of California should be an everyday story, except Gavin Newsom's planning on running for president, and his high-speed rail project is now expected to cost $126 billion, of which they do not have any way to get $90 billion of that. Isn't that amazing? And they haven't laid 1 foot of track down, $126 billion. And that's more than Amtrak has received in tax dollars in the entire history of Amtrak. And they say, oh, yeah, we're going to build a high-speed train from Los Angeles to... Sure you are. You people. You people. We've got all kinds of stuff going on in the United States, actually, with... I talked about it yesterday. The now deceased general. He's deceased because President Trump put the zap on him last time he was in the White House. Qasem Soleimani, General Qasem Soleimani of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and responsible for murdering many Americans. And now it turns out Qasem Soleimani, he's got a bunch of family living in the United States in the lap of luxury, according to news reports everywhere. And the Democrats are fine with that. If you're enemies of the United States, then you're welcomed into the United States by the Democrat Party because they're, I think, enemies of the United States too, pretty much. And we learned yesterday that the niece of Qasem Soleimani and the niece's daughter, so the grandniece of Qasem Soleimani, living in the United States of America with lots and lots of cash, ready money, living a luxurious life in the United States of America, lavish lifestyles, according to headlines there. And isn't that amazing? So the niece and the grandniece of slain Iranian General Qasem Soleimani were arrested by ICE, by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Turns out they lied on their applications, and they're very actively supporting Iran and radical Islamic jihadi terrorism and genocide against the Jews. And Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, he said, I don't think these people should be in the United States. And we're going to have ICE arrest them, and we're going to catapult them into the Atlantic Ocean, where they will splash down and likely be killed by giant sharks, cartoon-like sharks. All right, they're not going to be catapulted, but that said, and now today we've got another Iranian official who is being arrested and by ICE and thrown out of the United States of America because that's real good. That's real good. We don't want to have these terrorists, pro-terrorists, the psychotic, genocidal anti-Semites under the veil, if you will, of Islam in the United States. And Marco Rubio said, well, these two women just shouldn't be here. Qasem Soleimani's niece and grandniece. And so they are out. They are out. So that we were talking about that yesterday. Yes, sir. And the last story. Oh, I see. That's the thing there. Okay. Yeah. And now we've got this. The son of Iran's, the New York Post has the story, son of Iran's twisted PR chief found living life of luxury in L.A. And he's teaching super rich California kids because you got to brainwash and indoctrinate your kids to be part of a suicidal Islamist death cult and to be anti-Semites. The son of a notorious Iranian regime leader is enjoying an affluent lifestyle in Los Angeles, the California Post can reveal. Campaigners are calling Alyssa Hashemi, 43 years old, to be investigated and deported for defiantly refusing to denounce his mother's sickening past. It's his mother. Come on, a boy's got to look out for his mother. On Monday, yesterday, he appeared unfazed by the controversy and defiantly brushed off a reporter's question, declining to speak after a workout at his fancy gym. He's got a fancy gym and a fancy car, fancy shoes. The college psychology lecturer is the son of Masuma Ebtekar, and also known as Screaming Mary, who acted as spokesperson for violent militants who stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran in 1979 and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. She was infamous worldwide for firing off twisted propaganda during the crisis, even encouraging captives to describe the punishing ordeal in glowing terms. So now the psycho, what do you call her? Axis Sally, Tokyo Rose, of the Iranian Revolution. And now her son, who's a grown man with a beard, and he's overweight, and he doesn't look like he goes to the gym much, but here he is, pictures of him leaving the gym. And Ebtekar was later promoted to Vice President for Women and Family Affairs by regime leaders. That was kind of a no-show job, I think. Isn't that amazing? Becoming the country's first female VP and one of the highest-ranking women in the Muslim world. And then here's her son. He looks like he's not doing very well. And now in January, protesters gathered at the $20,000 a year the $20,000 a year Chicago school in Claremont, California, east of Los Angeles, and other teaching institutions in the area with links to Hashemi for rallies calling for him to be deported. That's because, Persians who don't like the Islamist regime, they're not fans of these people, and they want him kicked out of the United States. The Iranians, Persians, a lot of them call themselves Persian because they don't want to be associated with Iran. You want, a proud ancient history for Persia, but Iran, on the other hand, they took on the name Iran, which translates to Aryan, like the Aryan Brotherhood and all that stuff, like the Nazi Aryan regime in Germany. And the Nazis went in there in the 30s into Iran, into Persia at the time, and convinced the people, you're the Aryan people. You are Iran. And that's why they changed them to be more Aryan. And that's worked out pretty well. All right, it could get caught up in that. Let's go to President Trump. President Trump, soundbite number one. And President Trump yesterday on Iran saying, hey, you guys, you've got to come to terms with this. We've kicked your butt. And you shot down one F-15, and we bombed the hell out of your whole damn country. And now the president's talking about taking out their power plants, and Democrats are saying, you're a war criminal. Not the Iranians, Donald Trump. President Trump yesterday.
We have a plan, because of the power of our military, where every bridge in Iran will be decimated by 12 o'clock tomorrow night, where every power plant in Iran will be out of business, burning, exploding, and never to be used again. I mean, complete demolition by 12 o'clock. And it'll happen over a period of 4 hours if we wanted to. We don't want that to happen.
We don't want that to happen. We just want Iran to start behaving like a member of the civilized, as a nation of the civilized world in the 21st century, and that seems unlikely. Now, the Iranians have called on young people to form human chains around power plants. They could chain them together. It would make it more human chainy. But isn't that amazing? And they want these young people and artists in particular to gather and form human chains around power plants, and apparently bridges. Harder to form a chain around a bridge, but they could just go out. And they're saying, come out here and commit suicide for Iran because, we'd like you all to die. President Trump also wants the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of the world's oil travels on a regular basis. Open up the Strait of Hormuz, you bunch of bearded loons.
I would say it's a very big priority. We can bomb the hell out of them. We can knock them out for a loop. But to close the strait, all you need is one terrorist that somehow has a truck loaded with, because you can carry them in trucks, large trucks, a water mine, drop them in the water. And now you tell people that own ships that cost $1 billion to don't worry about the mine. You can do that even just by saying we put mines in the water.
Yeah, we put mines in the water. Sea mines, I would call them sea mines. But they're mines that go in the water, so they could be water mines too. Isn't that amazing? And I got to say, and President Trump, President Trump came in the first time he was president, and he said, what's with NATO having committed by treaty to contribute 2% of their gross domestic product to the shared defense, the common defense, and then they don't do it. They put in like 0.5% of their GDP. And President Trump said enough is enough. put in 2%. And the New York Times and CNN all became angry and banged their heads against one another's heads. And they say, Trump is ruining NATO. He's destroying NATO. No, he's telling them to pay what they've agreed to pay. And the Democrats were completely against it because we're only $37 trillion in debt now. Democrats want us to die drowning in our own debt because they're not on our side. And then the NATO countries said, well, we should be paying 2%. And once a couple of nations started, then they all said, okay, we're all going to. Then President Trump said, you should even be paying more. And then a bunch of countries, NATO member countries, started putting in 5% of their GDP, making NATO stronger. And then President Trump is taking on the enemies of civilization in Iran. And the Democrats are with the enemies of civilization because that's the way they are. And they're not on our side. President Trump talking about NATO and how NATO didn't say they won't let us fly over Portugal. They won't let us fly over Spain. They won't let us fly over who else? Great Britain wasn't being helpful. I think Italy said don't fly over us. All right, we should just feed you to the radical Islamists. And maybe we should have fed you to the Soviet Union. And maybe we should have fed you to the Nazis. But we hadn't. Maybe we should have fed you to the Kaiser's boys. But we've had to come in the United States of America and crush the Kaiser's boys. My mother's father was there, Patrick Henry Barnes, as a doughboy in World War I. Crush the Nazis. My father was there in World War II as a Navy fighter pilot, killing Nazis. And then America stood guard at the Fulda Gap and at Checkpoint Charlie, and we held and we fought against the spread of Soviet communism in the Korean War and in the Vietnam War to stop totalitarianism from spreading. And in the meantime, we're holding Europe safe over here from the Soviet Union. And then we say, hey, give us a hand over here. And they say, oh, no, we couldn't do that. So President Trump on NATO.
I'm very disappointed in NATO. Very. I think that NATO, it's a mark on NATO that will never disappear. Never disappear in my mind. They're coming to see me on Wednesday. They're going to say, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. Now they all of a sudden want to send things,
Yeah, the NATO chieftain is coming to the White House tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, Wednesday, and going to be meeting with the president. I think the president will probably give him a little bit of what for. So yesterday, President Trump, I think he held a 6-hour-long press conference. And just everywhere he went, there was an ongoing press conference. He's talking to little kids, and he's holding a press conference with them, telling them president autographing things, saying you can sell this for $25,000 on the internet later, telling the kid. But here's the president yesterday talking about the Iranians.
Yesterday in your Truth Social, you called the Iranians crazy bastards.
True.
True.
What is your response to critics who say that...
I don't care about critics.
What is your response to critics who say that it is your mental health that should perhaps be examined as this war continues?
I haven't heard that. But if that's the case, you're going to have more people like me because our country was being ripped off on trade, on everything for many years until I came along.
Well, and that's 100% true. And President Trump noticed that we were getting the short end of the stick on every trade deal that we had cobbled together with every country because, we're the richest country in the world. We've got to give a little to every single country on earth. And now we're $37 trillion in debt. My best girl and I were having a conversation at dinner last night, as you might do, and suggesting that maybe President Trump should go to our NATO allies and the Europeans and say, listen, we'd like you guys to pay off our national debt. You owe us $37 trillion. And when you're done paying off our national debt, since we've bailed you out again and again and again, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, the Cold War, the radical Islamists, and we're still doing it. Maybe you pasty Europeans, you cross-dressing frauds, maybe you should pay off our national debt for us. Then we could have another discussion on, more as equals. What do you think of that? And you should really be cleaning up the Islamist thing. Start in your own backyard, too.
What is your response to critics who say that...
I don't care about critics.
right, let's see. Let's go to coming up to the top of the hour again. We have much more to share with you in our hour number 3. Let's see. Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Nick, calling from Northwest Arkansas. Nicholas, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris, how are you today?
Hey, Nick, very well, very well.
Yeah, I'm a first-time caller. I've been listening to you for a while now.
That's great. Well, welcome.
I just had a question about the post that Donald Trump made this morning about, it seems kind of dangerous, and to me it seems un-American to say stuff like that. It's dangerous, kind of terrorist-like, if you know what I mean.
The way that Trump is threatening Iran.
Yeah, the complete annihilation of a whole civilization. That's just,
yeah, it's charged language. You don't
for a president.
You don't hear language like that very often. That's for sure. Well, Donald Trump is a unique political figure, and I've got to say, I got to say, Nick, that President Trump has given them. First, he said, "I'll give them a week to respond," right? And then we're halfway through, and he said, "I'll make it 10 days. I'll make it 10 days." And he wants Iran to come to the table and to discuss the nuclear weapons program they have and all that. And I think you'd agree, Nick, that we don't want Iran with an arsenal of nuclear weapons on top of ICBMs, 100%. Right? Yeah.
Oh, I agree. It's just that, that the threat that the president made is for an entire civilization.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty well.
Children, it's for families that have nothing to do with the government of Iran. That just, it's dangerous. That is very dangerous talk, and it's very un-American, and it's kind of disgusting.
Well, there's a lot of back and forth going on that topic today, Nick, and I'll tell you what, I'll hit refresh on that topic in a minute.